This is Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the Democratic Socialist from New York's 14th District. Recently, she unveiled a suite of new legislation that she is calling a just society. You probably didn't hear about it because she decided to introduce her plan the day after Nancy Pelosi announced an official impeachment inquiry against President Trump, and the same day that the Ukraine transcript was released. Brilliant. Now, most Congresspeople submit bills and maybe put out a press release and maybe hold a small press conference, but not AOC. Everything this woman does has to be a media event, even when she goes to a parking lot down at the border. So the Congresswoman announced her plan to the public through a video, a NowThisNews exclusive, and it's a mess.
America today is at its wealthiest point than in its entire history.
Pro tip, AOC, for a microphone to work, you have to turn it on.
And in fact, many would argue that today the United States represents one of the richest societies in global history.
But many would argue that because our national debt is approaching $23 trillion, that we couldn't possibly be at our wealthiest point.
Except among all these record profits, 40 million Americans are living in poverty.
According to the US Census in 2018, there were 38.1 million people in poverty. And that's a high number for sure, but it's misleading. Because when calculating poverty, the Census Bureau doesn't factor in any of the government assistance that the poor and near poor receive.
And 18.5 million Americans are living in extreme poverty, which is measured as less than $2 a day.
How poverty is measured in the United States is a big debate among academics. It all depends on how you define poverty and interpret the data. AOC is getting her $2 a day figure from a report by the United Nations, and just like the US Census, it doesn't factor in the billions of dollars in government assistance provided to low-income Americans like welfare, food stamps, housing assistance, tax credits, Medicare, and Medicaid. But according to Angus Deaton, a Nobel laureate in economics, there are only 3.2 million Americans that are living below the World Bank's poverty line of less than $1.90 a day. However, according to the Center of Global Development, who used consumption measures from the US Consumption and Expenditure Survey, found the extreme poverty rate to be 0.07%. That would imply that there are only around 229,000 people in the US that live on less than $1.90 a day. But you know what? Let's go with the UN's report since it has the bigger number.
That's why I'm so excited to introduce a suite of legislation, including 5 bills and 1 resolution that begins to chip away at our issues of economic injustice. And we're calling it a just society.
Economic injustice? Got it.
A just society to me would be better housing, better job opportunities, freedom to transform.
There might be better job opportunities if you didn't have prison tats on your face, but who am I to judge?
Entonces, creo que si hay una sociedad justa debería ser para todo igual.
Una sociedad justa sería respeto a la misma raza.
Look, we should all treat each other the same, regardless of race or color of skin. However, these two gentlemen are affiliated with Make the Road Nevada, an organization advocating for the rights of illegal immigrants. So they are purposely conflating race with immigration status.
Our first bill is called the Recognizing Poverty Act, which seeks to update the national poverty guidelines in order for us to acknowledge modern life, which includes geographic cost of living, the price of health insurance, childcare, and new necessities like internet access.
Internet in every home is not a human right. If you want free internet, go to the library or a Starbucks.
A just society recognizes and eradicates poverty.
As a society, we already recognize that there is poverty, which is why we allocate nearly $1 trillion a year in taxpayer money to low-income individuals, and a lot of it, unfortunately, goes to waste. For example, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program allows recipients to buy commodities like soft drinks, which in 2016 cost taxpayers an average of $357 million a month. That's $4.29 billion a year. And don't forget the $818 million spent on cake, $823 million on ice cream, and $1.1 billion on bagged candy. It's like you, the American taxpayer, are footing the bill for a multi-million-dollar birthday party, and you weren't invited. And let's not forget the $158.4 million spent on chewing gum. That's not even a food! And now I have to contribute to everyone's home internet access? Will I have to pay for their computers and iPads too? Fat chance.
My story begins in 2017 when our landlords sold their property to new business developers, and then they in turn came in with the $300 pay increase.
So this woman had an apartment, her lease was up for renewal, and then her landlord wanted to raise the rent. So she can either accept the $300 rent increase or move to a new place, right? Not so fast, because a just society would make that rent increase illegal.
It also imposes a national cap of 3% on annual rent increases and begins to pursue penalties on abusive and predatory landlords so that they don't hurt any other family again.
So here's a scenario. Let's say that you're a landlord that owns a house or a small apartment building. As part of AOC's previous initiative, the Green New Deal, every building would be required to achieve maximum energy efficiency, water efficiency, safety, affordability, comfort, and durability. Then, once the building is upgraded to meet those new standards, your property will be reassessed and likely go up in value. And that means your property taxes will go up. And that means you'll need to raise the rent to help pay for it all. But in a just society, if you're not allowed to raise the rent high enough, the landlord will have to eat those costs. Of course, an alternative would be to find new tenants who are willing to pay more in rent and sign a new lease, right? Nope, you can't do that either, because the bill also limits what a property owner can do with their own property. For example, a landlord can only evict a tenant if they have either failed to pay rent for 2 months in a row, if they have caused substantial destruction to the property, or violate an explicit lease term. So you better make sure that that lease agreement is airtight, because unless you explicitly say no animal hoarding, you might be stuck with a shitty tenant for life. And the only other way you can force a tenant to leave is if the landlord seeks to occupy the unit or seeks the availability of the unit for occupancy by an immediate relative. So if you're a landlord, make sure that you have a very large family.
Our second piece of legislation is called the Place to Prosper Act, which creates a national access to counsel fund for all renters in America who are currently facing eviction.
So the bill is pretty cut and dry about what constitutes an eviction: not paying rent, destroying a unit, or breaking a rule on a lease. But that doesn't matter, because on top of that, AOC wants the government to allocate $65 billion over a 10-year period to provide free lawyers to renters who are facing eviction. So as a landlord, even if you think the lease agreement is airtight and you have the right to evict a tenant under AOC's law, you're still probably going to have to appear before a judge.
You pay too much on rent. You are, and it is extortion.
Yes,
High
it
rent,
is.
and the amount that we are paying is absolutely too high, and it's criminal. It is outrageous.
In AOC's world, all landlords are greedy criminals and all tenants are helpless victims.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
It's been really hard for me to find housing.
Top of the line production, Now This News. Just top notch.
I have the money to move places and stuff, but they deny me for my felony history. It's not right. No matter what, every place I go to, they try to force me to a certain area in town.
So which is it? You can't find housing, or you can only get housing in a certain area of town? This should be a no-brainer, but if you want a better job in housing, remove the dermal piercing and invest in tattoo removal.
The Mercy and Re-Entry Act ends federal discrimination of extending public benefits to people who were formally convicted of a crime and duly paid their debt to society.
Nowhere in the bill does it say anything about duly paying their debt to society. But it does say that an individual may not be denied any federal public benefit solely on the basis that the individual was convicted of a criminal offense. In other words, the Mercy and Reentry Act would entitle felons and others with criminal convictions to full eligibility for welfare programs, food stamps, and public housing. So here's a hypothetical. What happens if someone is convicted of welfare fraud? Once they have served their time in prison, they get to receive welfare? It seems counterintuitive. Look, I have no problem with the formerly incarcerated being set up for success, but making a law that demands that every single person be entitled to all public benefits, regardless of the crime they were convicted of, is, I'm not sure how to describe it.
It's bogus, it's a scam.
Yep, there you go.
Queremos una sociedad más justa para todos. Todo aquel que tenga documento o no tenga documento. En mi caso tengo un espacio muy pequeño y estoy buscando un espacio más grande, pero mi income es muy bajo, muy por debajo de la pobreza.
How is the government obligated to give you any type of benefit? You're not supposed to be here.
The Embrace Act also ends this type of federal public benefits discrimination based on one's immigration status.
The bill says an individual who is an alien, without regard to the immigration status of that alien, may not be denied any federal public benefit solely on the basis of the individual's immigration status. This means that illegal aliens cannot be lawfully denied retirement, welfare, health, disability, public or assisted housing, post-secondary education, food assistance, unemployment benefits, or any other similar benefit. So if someone is breaking the law by stealing someone's identification and obtaining a job that they're not legally supposed to have, why are they entitled to unemployment benefits? And logistically, how are we supposed to grant these people any type of benefit if they are undocumented?
A just society embraces our immigrants.
Again, blurring the line between legal immigration and illegal immigration. Incredibly dishonest, even for a politician. Stop, stop, stop. The B-roll they are showing here is of a factory in India.
A just society affirms workers' rights.
Where? In India?
We then direct the federal government to prefer doing business with worker-friendly contractors, and this includes considerations like worker cooperatives, union memberships, and pro-worker policies like paid family leave, a living wage, healthcare, and more.
So every federal contractor in the United States is going to receive a score based largely on the benefits that an employer gives its employees. So even if a contractor comes in with a low bid, a contractor with a higher score will get priority. Like whether an employer guarantees 12 weeks or more paid family or paternal leave annually. Of course, the employers that are able to offer perks like that are likely very rich companies, so great job, AOC.
Our final piece of legislation is a resolution that directs the Senate to finally ratify the UN Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Already, 170 international parties have signed on to the covenant, which guarantees a modern set of human rights that includes housing, healthcare, and education, as well as the right to form a trade union and modern-day dignified work conditions.
Saying that the covenant guarantees a modern set of human rights is freaking ridiculous. Let's take a look at some of the countries that have agreed to the covenant. Iran, Qatar, North Korea, Somalia, China, Yemen, Syria, Russia, Venezuela, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Mexico, and so much more. So why isn't the UN doing anything to make sure that all of these countries are abiding by the terms of the covenant?
It's bogus, it's a scam.
Exactly. Big announcement, everyone. The Don't Walk Run Productions Discord server is up and running. If you're a Patreon or YouTube channel member, you get a special Discord role and access to some private channels. And you might see Poofy on there, who is a big help on this week's script. Other than that, thanks for watching, sharing, and hitting that like button. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, well, I don't know what to tell you.